Praise be Jesus and Mary. Welcome. We are starting a new weekly show today in which we'll be touching on the latest Fatima Center activity, and then we're going to turn our gaze to Washington, D.C., looking at both the National Day of Penance and Trump's inauguration. Then stay tuned for our final topic, an Episcopal appointment that links our time to the third secret of Fatima. Let us know what you think about our first episode. We'd love to get your feedback. This is Fatima Today with David Rodriguez, Content Director of the Fatima Center.
And I'm Monique Ruecki, part of the content team and donor relations for the Fatima Center.
In this show, what we're going to be doing is looking at all events, whether they be historical, current events, day-to-day stuff in our lives, from the perspective of Fatima. Because it's so important to realize that Fatima is not just a pious devotion. It is so much more. It is the most important message for our times, and it is still extremely relevant today. So that's really the goal of this show, to show that. Now in Fatima, one of the most central things is Our Lady calls us to prayer. And so we'll jump right into our Fatima activities because we're going to try to encourage everyone to join us in prayer. What have we got later on this month, Monique?
Okay, well, we have the 54-day Rosary Novena, which is really, really important because the intention is for the consecration of Russia. And until that consecration of Russia is done, we are not going to be having world peace. So it's very, very important for people to pray for this intention. So people should have been receiving our little calendar for the 54 days. It starts on January 31st and it ends on March 25th, which is the Feast of the Annunciation of Our Lady. So very special intention, very important intention, and we hope that as many people will participate as possible in this special Rosary Novena.
Right. We're certainly hoping that everyone prays for this every day, but there is more strength when we unite our prayers together. So getting everyone all over the world, certainly the United States and Canada and other English-speaking places where the Fatima Center Apostolate reaches the most, but we reach other places as well. When we unite our prayers, it's going to have a greater effect. So again, mark your calendars. January 31st is when we start it. And if you need any support on this, we'll be posting the text of the prayers at our website, as well as videos with priests leading the rosaries. And there'll also be a podcast of that. So you'll be able to tune into any of our social media channels to join us in that 54-day Rosary Novena. Next week, we'll talk a little bit more about the history of the 54-day Novena and why this is such a powerful prayer. Because, we're living in difficult times. And if we don't obey Our Lady, things will only get worse. Of course, if we obey Our Lady, things will dramatically improve. There'll be a glorious restoration. But in the meantime, we do need every protection we can get. And so one of the very important protections is the Epiphany home blessing, right, Monique?
The Epiphany house blessing is an important sacramental in the church. And I'm Canadian, and unfortunately, we had a postal strike here, so a lot of Canadians did not receive our mailing on the Epiphany chalk blessing until recently. But it's a very important blessing for your home that you chalk your door, like the main door to your house. You can even do all the doors, but the main door on your house, you chalk with a very special blessing for that particular year. It has the initials of the three wise men, and you put the year in there. So,
and there's a good period you can get this done in. So January 6th is going to be the day that the priest blesses the chalk. However, it is a Christmas Epiphany blessing. So certainly throughout the Christmas season or Epiphany tide, you can get your house blessed by the priest to come. That's the best thing. If the priest cannot come, the head of the household can also provide the blessing. And we have all kinds of resources for that up on the Fatima Center's website.
Absolutely. The video that Father Rodriguez made on the Epiphany blessing was really informative. I urge everybody to watch that one. But I have a great story about the Epiphany blessing and how someone's home was protected. So Jesse Romero on YouTube, he had a great story about how this gentleman in California's home was protected. So what happened was the gentleman chalked his doors on his home on the Feast of the Epiphany on January 6th. And then on January 7th, he was evacuated from his home. And when he returned, all the homes in the neighborhood were burned down except for his particular house. His house was the only one standing. There's pictures of it. It's really quite amazing. So it just goes to show that when you ask God for his protection, he will give it. And this actually goes back to the Old Testament, as Father Rodriguez said in his video. So I urge you to watch it. It's very important.
Yeah, it's important to build up our confidence in our Lord and in Our Lady. They work miracles for us for that reason. Fatima is certainly all about that. Again, if you need more information, just check out one of the articles at the website. As Monique was saying, you do put the year on your door, 2025. And this year also marks for us here at the Fatima Center a very important event. That's the 10th anniversary of the passing of our dear beloved founder, Father Nicholas Gruner. So throughout the year, the Fatima Center will be holding some special activities to honor our founder as we continue to carry out his mission to get everyone to obey Fatima's message, Our Lady of Fatima's message, to know that message, to get the consecration of Russia done. One of the biggest events we're going to be doing is what we're calling the Ultimate Marian Pilgrimage.
Yes, absolutely. This pilgrimage is going to be held from April 21st until May 2nd. It is the ultimate Marian pilgrimage because we're going to be visiting Fatima and Lourdes. We're going to go basically 3 countries. So we will be in Portugal, we will be in Spain, and we will be in France.
Some of the great Marian shrines that we'll be visiting are the Rue de Bac in Paris, which is where Our Lady gave the miraculous medal. So 1830, that's like when the Marian age begins. Then we'll also be in Lourdes, which is obviously one of the most important apparitions, many miracles. And we're going to be visiting Fatima, naturally, but several places along the way, like where St. Ignatius of Loyola was, as well as where St. Teresa of Avila's body is still kept. So in Salamanca, Spain. So we hope you can join us, but the spaces are limited and we need to get you to sign up quickly, don't we, Monique?
We do. So basically the cost is $3,800 US. And if you put down your deposit of $500, that will reserve your spot. Okay. So we only have limited seating. So make sure that you do reserve your spot so you can go. I urge everyone to come on this pilgrimage if they possibly can. We have a fantastic spiritual director, Father Carl Stellen. I went on a Marian retreat with him. Boy, can he bring out the depths of spirituality within the Fatima message is absolutely unbelievable. But he's also going to be giving us spiritual conferences where we go to all these different places that we can see. So he's not just going to be a priest who's saying mass, but he's actually going to be giving us a lot more depth to everything that we are visiting. So it's really, really important. And Father Gruner did this whole pilgrimage before, and so we want to do that to repeat what he did in honor of the 10th anniversary of his passing.
Yeah, and I think a lot of you might know Father Stalen because we've been featuring him on the website in several of the videos. But I will tell you, even those of us who have studied the message a lot and know a lot about the message of Fatima, every time I hear him speak, he gives me new insights, profound spiritual insights. So don't just look at this as a vacation. Don't even just look at it as a pilgrimage. It certainly can be those things, but I think even more importantly, it's going to be a spiritual journey. And it's going to be a way to deepen your interior life and your spiritual life with Father Stalen. And on that kind of thing, you really, it's a lifetime, once in a lifetime opportunity. So when you're generous with God, with your time and your effort, he will be generous in return. You will learn a lot about Fatima. Now, this show assumes that you know a fair amount about Fatima already. Over time, we'll cover little things in this show. But if you don't know that much about Fatima, one thing you can do, I encourage you, is to read True Story of Fatima by Father John DeMarschi. It's a great little book. I actually assign it to my high school students, so it's a simple read, and you can call us, get it, or we even have the PDF online in multiple languages. Then you can also watch some of my videos called Fatima Basics. So just put that into the search bar, and that's like a 1-hour talk, both the video and the podcast, to get you on the basics of Fatima, as well as 2 really good videos that Father Gruner produced years ago, but they're excellent, and we have them under the if you go to the homepage, under the video tab, the menu, you'll see Heaven's Key to Peace, and you'll see The Secret Still Silenced. So those are 2 good videos that would catch you up on, a lot of the important things you need to know about Fatima. In that, you'll learn that Fatima is also about penance, which moves us to our second point for today's show.
Absolutely. Well, today is the National Day of Penance, and it's basically because we need to make penance for the sin of abortion. The sin of abortion is one of the crimes calling out to heaven for vengeance. I mean, these are innocent lives, that are just being taken on such a large scale, billions of people. So definitely we need to be making penance in this country and in my country of Canada. We don't have the same anniversary date as you. Our March for Life is in May. You unfortunately, the decision of the Supreme Court in the United States with Roe versus Wade was happened in January. So you have a very cold month to go and do some extra penance.
Yes, we do. And I know a lot of young people are going to be headed out there from some of the local parishes. I believe that march is going to be on Friday. And yeah, Roe v. Wade was on this day, 1973, unfortunately. And even the Dobbs versus Jackson decision of the Supreme Court decision a few years ago on the Feast of the Sacred Heart, which many people did cheer, of course, has not undone the evil by any stretch. Now, in fact, a lot of different states are amending their constitution in the United States, are amending their constitution so as to make abortion a supposedly, fundamental legal right that cannot be taken away. And so in some ways, the battle is certainly getting harder against what I always call is the Satan's sacrament, or the sacrifice offered on Satan's altar, which is the lives of these innocent children, right? So we do have much penance to do. That's why it's a National Day of Penance. Hopefully today you're doing some penance, maybe fast, maybe abstain, maybe say an extra rosary. Those things are listed, by the way, on our Fatima Center calendar. A lot of people may not even know that it's a National Day of Penance, so we list those kinds of things on the Fatima Center calendar. We hope you have your copy as well.
Yeah, and when Roe versus Wade was overturned, everybody thought, "Oh, isn't that great?" But states' rights trump in the United States, and so this small little victory didn't turn out to be such a great victory after all. And it just goes to show how things are so changeable. I mean, when the last March for Life happened, when President Trump was in office, he appeared at the March for Life. And that was, I think, the first time a president ever actually spoke at the March for Life, which was very encouraging. A lot of people were excited about that. The last campaign, when he was running before he was elected, he seemed to distance himself from a few things, with the pro-life movement. So I'm not sure if he's going to be speaking again or not.
Yeah, I haven't heard that yet either. And I think it is important that you mention that, because none of us should get taken away with just sort of small things. Our Lady has told us what the sure sign is of Russia's consecration. Because again, that decision came shortly after whatever it was that Francis did on March 25th in 2022. But it wasn't the consecration of Russia as Our Lady requested. And some people were claiming it was, but no, Our Lady's given us the sure signs, and that's going to be the conversion of Russia to the true Catholic faith and peace in the world.
Do the cold winter months have you a bit depressed? Well, I have some spiritually uplifting news for you. Catholic Family News is going to be hosting a conference in sunny, warm Orlando, Florida, March 1st and 2nd. The theme of the conference is the global conflict between Christ's plan for peace and the devil's plan for disorder. We all sense that there is a great global conflict going on. This conference is an opportunity to step back from the details and look at the writings of an Irish priest from 100 years ago, Father Denis Fahey, who wrote about this global conflict and essentially predicted many of the things we're living through today. We have an excellent lineup of speakers, including both myself and Chris Ferrara from Church and State, as well as Father Michael McMahon, Father Matthew Panos, Mrs. Childs, Dr. Peter Kwasniewski, Mary Rundis, and Dr. John Rao. There will be a traditional Latin Mass offered publicly each day, so you won't even have to leave the hotel. For more information on the conference, please go to the website of Catholic Family News, where you can find a link to buy tickets. You can also use this QR code.
Of course, you did mention Trump, and I think there's been a lot of buzz here because just a few days ago he was inaugurated. And so we might touch on a few there. Certainly some good things are being done. I've already heard from people that live in El Paso, my hometown, that the port of entry was closed to sort of stop the flow of the illegal immigrations. Someone else was telling me, I think it was Rotticelli, that Biden's sort of pro-abortion website where you can go and find out all these things called reproductiverights.gov was shut down already. right that same
Well,
day.
that's
I
encouraging.
was looking that up. It is gone. I think they've just sort of retooled it, though, and now it's reproductiverights.org. But at least that shows that it's not having the full support of the federal government. That's definitely a Trump influence. And then he's also pardoned Bevelyn Williams. Many of you may have remembered her. She's a pro-life advocate, young mom. I think she's only 32, 33 years old, from Tennessee. She's got a 2-year-old daughter. And back in July, she was sentenced to 3.5 years of prison, basically just for trying to pray against abortion. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. So he's already pardoned her. So we are seeing some things. We'll wait to see. I never quite know. One thing that I thought doesn't quite suit me, right? I think we have to be careful when we credit things to God. As I said earlier, just like with his Dobbs-Jackson decision, part of his inaugural speech, he referenced how he believes, it's okay for him to believe that, but he believes that God saved him with that bullet shot. And he says to make America great again. And a lot of people were chattering about that back in the day because it happened on July 13th. So again, there's a Fatima connection there. And people were making those links. And I say, well, certainly God is at work in all things, and God allows all things. So God is, controlling all of history. He's in charge. So he definitely has a role to play. And maybe he does have something for President Trump to do for the United States or for the world. But I don't think we should think of him as like the one that's going to bring about everything. It's ultimately Our Lady.
Absolutely. Our Lady is the one that said, only I can help you. So politicians, they change their positions here and there. I know that a lot of Americans are very excited about President Trump being in office. He does a lot of good things for the country, that's for sure. But I'm living in Canada, and so we're looking at things from a slightly not different perspective, but just there's an additional concern that we have, because he's been saying that he wants to put a 25% tariff on all of our goods that we export to the United States. So, our economy is not doing very well anyway, because we've had Prime Minister Trudeau in power since 2015. And he's, as far as I'm concerned, pretty much ruined our country economically. So having an additional tariff put on is really going to hurt our country. Although I do understand, the border concerns. We've had border concerns of our own. For different reasons, more with too much immigration where we don't have the infrastructure to handle that. So we have all kinds of mutual concerns with the two countries, but we also have some reservations about President Trump, because he's the president of the United States. He's not the president of the world. So everyone is affected differently by his presidency, and I'm hoping it will work out.
Well, that's a really good point, because I think, we can have our perspective as individual Americans or Canadians, but we also have to remember that we're Catholic, and God doesn't just look at the United States or Canada or Germany or Brazil or any other country. He is looking at the whole world, and Our Lady of Fatima is concerned for the whole world. All are her children. Right. So when she talks about peace in the world, she doesn't just talk about peace in our neighborhoods or peace in our country. I mean, since 1917, there has not been peace in the world. Some point in the world has been in constant conflict, which shows how important Our Lady's promise is. So from the perspective of Fatima, we do have to take a more sort of global perspective, because that's certainly what our Lord and Our Lady are doing. And like you say, okay, so President Trump wants to make his country great. I wish every president would want to do that. Every prime minister, Trudeau, I mean, he was effectively a communist, which is, again, Our Lady's stopping communism. We had a whole issue on that, a lot of videos talking about the problems of communism. So we're trying to stem those tides of communism. But I definitely think that God can use anyone. It doesn't mean that they're the perfect person either. I remember the wonderful Old Testament story. I believe it's the Persian king Darius, who allows the people of God to go back and then rebuild the temple and rebuild Jerusalem. So Darius was a pagan. He wasn't a perfect guy. I'm sure he had plenty of sins. I don't know my ancient Persian history that well, but God used him. Clearly, God used him to do this. Now, there were others that were involved, like Nehemiah, right? And Ezra, the priest. Ezra could be representative of like the Pope, the high priest. Nehemiah would be sort of like a sort of church politic mixed together, because he was a political leader. But there's other people that God is also using. So there's a lot of pieces that God's going to put together. And I, for one, am fascinated to see how Our Lady and our Lord are going to work this all out, right, for our good.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, so we are actually called to pray for our political leaders. It's really very important. They have a huge task ahead of them. And of course, as Catholics, we always want them to, make laws that are in accordance with the gospel, right? Because this year is the 100th anniversary of Quas Primus, the encyclical on Christ the King. So, that's always our hope. But nevertheless, we do have to pray for our leaders. And I know that Father Rippiger, he actually suggested that President Trump consecrate himself to Our Lady. I think that's a great suggestion, because if you consecrate yourself to Our Lady, she's going to definitely lead you in the right direction. So I think that would be wonderful, and we should pray for that intention. But unfortunately, we have some leaders in our church, or some bishops in our church, that I don't think are being led by Our Lady.
Right. Well, and without a doubt, we're living in Fatima time. I mean, the
Yeah.
third secret foretold the great loss of faith in the church and even apostasy at the highest levels. We have that from men like Cardinal Odi, Cardinal Chapi, Bishop Albareto do Amaral. If anyone wants to know the contents of this third secret, which of course to some extent remain hidden, but we recently put out a great Fatima Crusader, which explains the third secret as best as we can. So get yourself that copy and look at it. But once again, clearly the third secret is talking about the apostasy. And we have a lot of signs for that. But one that recently made some headline news, on January 6th of all days, the feast of the Epiphany, when God manifests himself, is that Cardinal Robert McElroy of San Diego is now being named the Archbishop of Washington, D.C. by Francis.
Yes, and Cardinal McElroy is definitely a modernist bishop. Or cardinal, actually, I should say, a modernist cardinal. And he did nothing about the, sexual abuse crimes of Cardinal McCarrick. In fact, I read that there was somebody involved with that whole sexual abuse crisis who said that she's terrified the fact that Cardinal McElroy is now going to be in this position, and he's also a cardinal who has no problem giving communion to politicians who publicly support the crime of abortion. He has no problem with that. He definitely supports Father James Martin and everything that Father James Martin teaches about these alternative lifestyles. So definitely he is a modernist cardinal. But I am in Canada, so maybe, David, you could explain to me why it is so concerning that he has been made cardinal of the Archdiocese of Washington. What's so important about that diocese?
Yeah, I've definitely got my take on that in talking to individuals. Some people think it's Francis trying to sort of raise a voice of opposition to what Trump might be doing. There certainly might be that angle, but I think what is far more important and far less Catholics know about is that for some decades now, certainly going back to the pontificate of John Paul II, the two main episcopacies in the United States became Chicago and Washington, D.C. And basically what the Pope has done is he sort of split the United States into two areas. The Mississippi River is a good dividing line, and all the appointments to new bishops east of the Mississippi are basically controlled by the Cardinal of D.C., and all the ones west of the Mississippi are controlled by the Cardinal in Chicago. And what I mean by that is that, the Pope doesn't know a lot of people in the United States. He doesn't know who to nominate. So in every country, the Pope does rely on various men he picks, cardinals, to sort of say, well, who should I make the new bishop of whatever it might be, the diocese of this or that city, of this or that place. And so now with McElroy being put in D.C., it's just going to be more of the individuals who think like him. And Supich is in Chicago. So we have two of the absolute worst bishops in the United States who in many ways show many signs of falling into the apostasy themselves, as being the ones who are now going to be having privileged access to name new bishops, which shows that apostasy is going to deepen. So that's my really, really big concern there with McElroy being named to D.C.
It's interesting because Sister Lucy and Pope John Paul II both referred to chapters 8 to 13 of the Apocalypse, and there's mention in there of a third of the stars falling from the sky, right? And stars in biblical language is the the bishops of the church, right? The prelates who are spiritual leaders falling from the sky. So that definitely shows, at least a third are in apostasy, right? So that's.
And this star has fallen hard. I have a number of good friends and know quite a few people in San Diego. Back when I lived in El Paso, we used to go out there about once a year. So I had called up my contacts to find out more about him. These are people on the ground. So some of this stuff you may not always read about. But just so you know a little bit of like McElroy's resume, he was ordained in San Francisco in 1980 by Archbishop Quinn. Those who might know the name Archbishop Quinn and the Am Church scandal know he's been very deeply involved in the whole homosexual lobby that is taking control of the church, certainly on the West Coast. Well, he was one of his guys. And he went through Jesuit studies, really got into sort of liberation theology, more communism at work here. He's written on quote unquote social ethics, basically just wokeism. So that's who he is. In 2015, he was made the Bishop of San Diego. And then in 2022, Francis made him a cardinal. Well, they were at a local question and answers that was related to the synod that they were having in San Diego. And people began to ask him about a certain individual named Arian Bianco. Aaron was a very proud homosexual. He was working at St. John the Evangelist as part of the parish team. And he would always talk about his wife, who was a man. And the people of the parish were getting very, very upset about this. And when they brought this up to Bishop McElroy, he basically defended the position of having him on staff, which is not a way to represent the Catholic faith at all. In the end, this individual did leave of his own volition, although I read that Francis invited him to speak at the Vatican, this Mr. Aaron Bianco, and now he's been hired in the Diocese of Lexington, Kentucky, just south of me, by Bishop Stowe, another one that belongs to that little homosexual mafia, really, to be the director of worship in the diocese. So, I mean, you can see what kind of people we have here and all the signs that it is apostasy. Just in June of 2024, he declared the San Diego diocese bankrupt due to clerical sexual misconduct over the previous 8 years, which is all under his tenure. So all of these things are happening under his tenure there in San Diego, and now the people's money is going away. Obviously, during COVID, he shut everything down, and he certainly didn't care about funds because they were getting millions and millions of dollars from the federal government to support the illegal immigration streaming across the border from Tijuana. He has banned the traditional Latin Mass in the diocese, shut it down and shut it down hard. Now it's only allowed in one Indian mission on the Pala Indian reservation, not even in a church. They're stuck in an auditorium. They're not allowed to grow. They're not allowed to advertise. It's not on diocesan property. They have no heat and no water there, and people have to drive a long way just to get to the one Latin Mass near them. And then he went ahead this year, also started attacking homeschoolers. A number of them were renting out space, like in the evenings in various parishes, so they could meet and have their classes and parents helping their children. And he banned that. He put out a memo to the whole diocese saying no one is allowed to rent any space to homeschoolers. We do not want homeschoolers, Catholic homeschoolers, on our parish property. So these are just some of the signs that show you the kind of individual that Francis is now making the Cardinal Archbishop of Washington, D.C., one of the most important posts in the United States. Clear signs of the apostasy, clear signs that we are in Fatima time. This is what Our Lady was telling us about in the third secret of Fatima.
Definitely, because when a Catholic cardinal or a Catholic bishop, is attacking faithful Catholics who are trying to teach their children the faith or attacking the traditional Latin Mass, you definitely know that they don't have the faith. They've either lost the faith or they never had it to begin with. But definitely, this is the apostasy in the church. Absolutely.
And nevertheless, despite all of that, we know that the Immaculate Heart of Mary will triumph. And so we know the solution. We'll continue to pray our rosary every day and practice that first Saturday devotion every month, wear our brown scapulars, offer our prayer and penances, and certainly pray for the consecration of Russia in that 54-day novena beginning January 31st. So, dear friends, this wraps up our inaugural episode of Fatima Today. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Comment and share. All those kinds of things will help the algorithm to raise up this show and this channel so that more people will get to see it. And we will see you next week.
And remember, Our Lady of Fatima gave us the only solution for the problems of our times. God bless you, everyone.
Our Lady of Fatima, pray for us.